Have you ever trusted someone or something so completely, only to question everything you thought you knew? What if the family dog you adored suddenly began growling at your newborn every single night, staring into the crib with an intensity that chilled you to the bone? Would you believe your loyal companion had turned dangerous? Or would you wonder if she was trying to tell you something far more urgent? Lisa and her husband were torn between fear and love when their gentle dog, Lila, changed overnight. What they discovered left them absolutely stunned, and it may have saved their baby's life. Why did Lila growl? What was she sensing that they couldn't see? You won't believe the truth behind this mysterious warning. Join us in reflecting on this true story. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification for more daily stories like this. Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you are what. For we would love to hear from you. Lisa had always dreamed of a cozy home filled with warmth, laughter, and the patter of little feet. Where son Jacob was born, that dream felt complete. She and her husband, Jacob's devoted father, had carefully prepared the nursery with soft pastel walls, a mobile of dancing stars, and a crib piled high with plush blankets. In that same period, they adopted Lila, a gentle golden retriever who quickly became part of the family. From the day Lisa brought Jacob home from the hospital, Lila seemed to sense how precious this tiny bundle was. She hovered nearby, wagging her tail, offering warmth and companionship. In those first few months, everything felt perfect. Lisa recalled the early evenings when she would nurse Jacob while Lila curled up at her feet. The dog's presence was as calming as a lullaby, and the entire house radiated serenity. Jacob's giggles echoed from his crib whenever Lila poked her nose between the bars, and Lisa often joked that Jacob's first word might be dog. The bond between them was immediately apparent. If Jacob squirmed or fussed, Lila would alert Lisa with a soft whine or a gentle nudge on her leg, a small reminder that the baby needed attention. It was a comfort Lisa had never known she needed. This harmonious routine continued until, quite suddenly, things changed. One chilly autumn night, Lisa was startled awake by a menacing growl coming from the baby's room. She flung back the covers and hurried down the hallway, heart pounding. She found Lila sitting by the crib, staring intently at Jacob and emitting a low, unsettling rumble. Never had she seen her beloved dog appear so tense or focused. At first, she assumed Jacob had somehow disturbed Lila, or that perhaps the dog was anxious after a bad dream. She gently guided Lila out of the nursery and whispered reassurances, hoping to calm the situation. Yet the same unnerving growl returned the following night. Again, Lisa rushed to the room to see Jacob sleeping soundly while Lila stood watch, growling in quiet warning. Concerned, Lisa's husband suggested that maybe Lila had developed a dislike for the new routine in the house, or she was responding to noises only dogs could detect. Neither of them could fathom the true cause. But the dog's behavior was so unusual that Lisa felt her chest tighten with a growing sense of worry. This was not the affectionate Lila they knew. Something was wrong, and Lisa felt ill at ease, not understanding what it might be. As the pattern repeated night after night, Lisa's anxiety deepened. She began to dread bedtime, fearing she'd be jolted awake by that low, guttural sound that sent chills down her spine. Friends and relatives offered all sorts of theories. One friend joked that maybe there was a ghost lurking around the nursery, while another suggested Lila was jealous of Jacob. Lisa tried to brush off the comments, but the notion of something unseen tormented her thoughts late at night. Nevertheless, she reminded herself that Lila had been nothing but loving until now. Why would that suddenly change? Was there something in the room, some noise or presence only the dog could detect? Lisa combed through the nursery, opening drawers, checking vents, and peering behind furniture, but found nothing amiss. The only constant remained that penetrating growl. Jacob's father took a more pragmatic approach. He researched potential medical conditions in dogs that could prompt nighttime agitation. He read about hearing sensitivities, the possibility of neurological problems, and even bizarre forms of canine sleepwalking. The couple resolved that, for Jacob's safety, they should figure out the cause immediately. If the behavior escalated, they would have to make the heartbreaking choice of removing Lila from the nursery. The very thought brought Lisa to tears. She loved Lila like her own child, but Jacob came first. For now, they lived in limbo, waiting for the next night, uncertain and afraid, wondering why their loyal companion had turned into a nightly sentinel with a haunting growl. Night after night, the growling persisted at around the same time, like clockwork. Lisa became so tense at sundown that she found it hard to settle into bed. Each time she drifted into a light sleep, she bolted upright at the faintest noise, convinced she would hear Lila's low rumble again. And, inevitably it came. Jacob's father was also exhausted, juggling full workdays and sleepless nights, trying to help Lisa cope with the baffling situation. Despite the tiredness, their hearts ached at the thought of Lila possibly becoming dangerous. This dog had shared their triumphs and sorrows, gently nudged Lisa's leg during her pregnancy, and guarded Jacob's crib with unwavering devotion. Now, however, her menacing stance in the nursery at midnight was impossible to ignore. Lisa refused to believe that Lila had turned into a threat without cause, but she was at a loss to explain it. Desperate for answers, they decided to invest in a simple surveillance camera. It was a small, discreet device that could record both audio and video throughout the night. If something was triggering Lila, perhaps the recording would capture it. On the first night they set it up, Lisa and her husband stayed awake in their bedroom, eyes fixed on the live feed displayed on Lisa's phone. They saw Jacob tucked snugly in his crib, chest rising and falling in the gentle rhythm of sleep. Lila lay on the floor nearby, her ears perked up in alertness. As the clock approached midnight, she stood, tail stiff, and walked closer to the crib. Lisa held her breath, waiting to see what might appear. But nothing did. There was no strange movement, no shadowy figure, no flicker of light that could possibly explain Lila's change in demeanor. Still, the dog began her eerie growling, staring at Jacob with intense concentration. It was heartbreaking to watch. Lisa felt torn. She knew Lila's instincts were usually correct, yet she had no evidence of any real danger. The next morning, the couple reviewed the footage in detail, slowing down the playback, zooming in, and analyzing each frame failed to reveal anything unusual. Jacob slept without stirring, and Lila's posture remained vigilant. Mystified, they consulted a veterinarian, worried that Lila might be experiencing some form of pain, a hidden medical condition, or even a neurological disorder. The vet conducted a thorough examination, checking Lila's joints, heartbeat, eyesight, and overall health, and declared her perfectly fine. That news, while reassuring, didn't solve the mystery. Still undeterred, Lisa and her husband turned to a professional dog trainer. Maybe this was a behavioral issue. Perhaps Lila sensed a subtle household problem, like a mouse in the walls or a faint smell that humans couldn't detect. The trainer visited their home, observing Lila's interactions with Jacob in the daytime. When the baby gurgled happily, Lila approached with a wagging tail and licked the child's hand softly. She showed zero aggression, and the trainer found her behavior exemplary. However, when night fell, the trainer stayed in the nursery with the lights off. At the stroke of midnight, Lila stiffened, ears back, and started that same guttural warning. The trainer couldn't see or hear anything to warrant such alarm. Yet Lila was obviously agitated, fixated on Jacob as if sensing danger. After the session, the trainer confessed he was stumped and recommended they inspect the house for leaks, faulty wiring, or anything else that might be imperceptible yet distressing to a dog's heightened senses. A group of specialists arrived, checking every inch of the home. They tested for carbon monoxide, radon, hidden pests, and potential drafts. Every test came back negative. No abnormal findings. Lisa's frustration soared as she imagined countless scenarios that might explain Lila's unsettling behavior. Could it be a supernatural presence? Could Lila be dreaming? Each explanation felt too far-fetched, yet the rational possibilities had already been ruled out. The couple felt cornered by their own confusion. They feared for Jacob's well-being, But parting with Lila seemed unthinkable. Was it worth risking their baby's safety on the assumption that a beloved pet simply needed time to adjust? Or was there a genuine threat they couldn't see? Each question weighed heavily on Lisa's heart, pressing her closer to a despair she never anticipated. As the nights dragged on, Lisa found herself checking Jacob's crib every few minutes. Even before Lila could start her haunting growl, the walls seemed to close in, each evening darker than the last. Jacob's father tried to remain a pillar of strength, but his worried gaze betrayed his own mounting anxiety. They loved Lila, but the late-night tension was taking its toll on everyone, including their once peaceful baby, whose restless sleep now caused daily fussiness. In an attempt to maintain a semblance of normalcy, Lisa forced herself to stick to a routine: morning feedings for Jacob, a neighborhood walk with Lila, then errands while Jacob's father worked. On those walks, Lila appeared perfectly content. She trotted beside the stroller, tail wagging. Passers-by would stop to admire the sweet dog and the adorable baby. Lisa found herself plastering on a smile, unwilling to admit that each night brought fresh terror. By the end of the third week, neither she nor her husband had enjoyed a proper night's rest. The dog trainer followed up with new ideas, suggesting they try a white noise machine or gentle music in the nursery to see if it calmed Lila. They tried lavender diffusers, soothing lullabies, and even changing the layout of the room. Yet the result was the same. Midnight struck, and Lila's low, guttural warning began. During one particularly stressful afternoon, Lisa's mother came over to help out. She looked at her daughter's drawn face and insisted that maybe the best course of action was rehoming Lila, at least temporarily, until Jacob was older. A mother's first duty is to protect her child, she said gently, though Lisa heard the urgency in her tone. She refused to consider it, tears pooling in her eyes. She owed Lila far too much. That loyal dog had been by her side through her pregnancy and had welcomed Jacob home with tail-wagging excitement. Kicking her out now felt like an act of betrayal. Still, the question nagged at Lisa. Was it selfish to keep Lila around if they couldn't explain her ominous behavior? Jacob's father began scanning online forums for advice. He read heartwarming anecdotes of dogs detecting cancer in their owners and guiding the blind. Could Lila sense something wrong with Jacob? A health condition that neither doctors nor parents had noticed? They agreed to take Jacob for a thorough pediatric checkup, though he seemed perfectly healthy. The pediatrician found no issues. Jacob was thriving, meeting developmental milestones, and had no concerning symptoms. As if to mock their efforts, the late-night growls continued unabated. Sometimes, Lila would place herself between the crib and the door, as though blocking an unseen intruder. Other times, she nudged Jacob's blankets or gently tapped the side of the crib, whining softly. But always, the growl accompanied her actions, making the hair on Lisa's arms stand on end. It was becoming more urgent, too, no longer just a faint rumble. Each night, the sound grew louder, more pressing, as if Lila was struggling to convey a message. One evening, in a final bid for clarity, Lisa tried staying in the nursery from dusk until dawn. She dozed fitfully in a rocker, the camera recording from the corner. Lila lay nearby, silent until just before midnight, when she rose and went to the crib. Lisa stood up, bracing for the growl. Lila bared her teeth slightly, but not at Jacob. Her gaze was fixed on the baby's face, as if watching him intently for a sign of distress. Then the growl emerged, deep and foreboding. By morning, Lisa was shaking with confusion. She watched the footage yet again, but it was identical to previous nights. Something was triggering Lila at that exact moment, and it was always directed toward Jacob, despite their unshakable bond. Lisa couldn't ignore the possibility that the dog might be reacting aggressively toward her child. Filled with dread, she and her husband began an earnest discussion about finding Lila another home, at least temporarily. Little did they know, an even more dramatic night lay ahead, one that would either confirm their greatest fears or reveal the truth behind Lila's strange, insistent warning. The night that changed everything began no differently from the others. Lisa and her husband crawled into bed, drained from worry, half expecting the usual scenario. The clock would near midnight, and Lila's ominous growl would fill the nursery. Lisa couldn't seem to shut off her mind. What if tonight was the night Lila acted on whatever aggression she was feeling? She found herself praying for a peaceful evening, praying that she was wrong about the danger, praying for any sign that Lila was still the gentle dog she had always known. Sure enough, around the usual time, a sharp bark shattered the silence. This was different, more urgent, more alarming. Lisa jolted awake, heart hammering in her chest. She sprinted down the hall with her husband, right behind her. As they burst into the nursery, they saw Lila standing on her hind legs, paws pressed against the crib. Her growl crescendoed into a series of intense barks, something she had never done before. The sudden, thunderous noise ripped through the house. Lisa's first instinct was to check Jacob. She dashed to the crib, flipping on the night light to see if anything was amiss. The sight that greeted her froze her blood. Jacob lay disturbingly still, his tiny chest, usually moving in soft, rhythmic breaths, appeared motionless. Panic flooded her system. She called out to her husband, voice trembling with terror. He rushed forward, but Lila intercepted him, grabbing the leg of his pajama pants with her teeth, tugging as if to move him closer to Jacob. Somehow, in the chaos, Lisa managed to place a hand on Jacob's chest. She felt no movement, no steady rise and fall. Her mind spun into a blur, desperately trying to recall infant CPR instructions. Before she could react, Lila nudged Lisa aside and thrust her snout toward the baby's face. The dog let out a guttural growl, deeper than ever, and gave Jacob a firm push with her nose, as if commanding him to react. In the same instant, Jacob's tiny mouth opened, and he let out a small, gasping cry that rapidly filled the room with the sweetest sound Lisa had ever heard. Relief swept over her like a tidal wave. Jacob was breathing again. Tears streamed down her face as she scooped him into her arms, pressing him to her heart. He coughed a few times, then began to cry loudly, a good, strong wail that signaled he was once more taking an air. Lisa's husband was shaking, torn between comforting Jacob and marveling at Lila, who stood beside them, panting heavily as if she, too, had been holding her breath. The ambulance arrived within minutes, lights blazing through the neighborhood. Paramedics whisked Jacob away to the hospital for a full evaluation. Lisa and her husband followed close behind, hearts pounding and minds racing with unanswered questions. The doctors performed a battery of tests, hooking Jacob up to monitors that tracked his oxygen levels and heart rate. Eventually, a pediatric specialist explained that their baby was likely suffering from a form of sleep apnea, a condition where his breathing could spontaneously pause, especially during deep sleep. As Lisa clutched her husband's hand, the enormity of the situation sank in. If Lila hadn't raised the alarm that night, if she hadn't used that strange, urgent growling to draw attention, Jacob might not have survived. The specialist gently affirmed this, stating that early intervention had saved the child's life. Lisa broke down in tears, overwhelmed with gratitude and guilt for having doubted Lila's intentions. By dawn, Jacob was stable, though he would need further observation. Lisa's husband drove home to check on Lila, who had been left behind in the chaos of the night. He found her curled up near Jacob's empty crib, looking lost, but still on guard, ready for her next watch. When he approached, she wagged her tail weakly, as if to ask if everything was all right. For the first time in weeks, he felt a burst of warmth toward the loyal dog, who had proven her devotion in the most life-saving way. Jacob remained under observation in the pediatric ward for several days. Each morning, Lisa arrived to learn more about his condition, while her husband took care of things at home, ensuring Lila's routine remained consistent. Specialists confirmed that Jacob had episodes of sleep apnea severe enough to cause his breathing to halt without warning. They showed Lisa the data from the oxygen monitor, where the abrupt drops mirrored the type of nighttime events Lila had been responding to all along. In hindsight, it made perfect sense. Lila must have detected subtle changes in Jacob's breathing patterns each night, perhaps slight shifts in scent or the quiet cessation of those soft inhalations. She had been trying to warn Lisa and her husband by growling, her instincts driving her to alert them to something amiss. Night after night, Lila had acted as a vigilant guardian, unaware that her humans didn't understand her message. The dog's final, desperate act, barking and nudging Jacob, had forced the crisis into clarity and potentially saved the baby's life. Word of Lila's heroism spread among neighbors, friends, and even hospital staff. Nurses came by to hear the tale, smiling in awe at the devoted retriever who had sensed danger beyond any human perception. The family's dilemma about possibly rehoming Lila now seemed both tragic and surreal. Lisa grieved her own doubts, recalling the times she almost considered sending Lila away. She kept replaying the moment Jacob's cry ripped through the silence after that final push from Lila's nose, and it sent shivers down her spine. When Jacob was finally discharged, Lisa and her husband brought him home to a new routine. The doctors recommended close monitoring and special equipment to help regulate his breathing at night. They set up a baby monitor complete with an apnea alarm. But beyond any machine, they also had Lila, who kept a quiet vigil near the crib, her eyes reflecting an almost maternal concern. Now, when midnight rolled around, Lisa and her husband watched with reverence instead of fear, grateful for every safe hour that passed. Neighbors dropped by with flowers, little gifts for Jacob, and treats for Lila. Some of them apologized for suggesting there might be something sinister about the dog's behavior. Others celebrated Lila's courage with cheerful praise, calling her a guardian angel in disguise. Lisa and her husband wholeheartedly agreed. They embraced the dog, lavishing her with affection and thanks. Lila, for her part, seemed content to rest her head on Lisa's lap, or gently sniff Jacob's tiny hand with a soft whine of concern. The experience had changed them all. Lisa felt a renewed commitment to trusting her instincts and Lila's. She recognized that animals often communicate in ways humans fail to understand. If only she had realized sooner that the nightly growl was a sign of distress, not aggression. Whenever she glanced at Jacob's peaceful face, she thanked the dog who had become more than just a pet. Lila was now a vital member of their family's safety net. With each passing day, Jacob grew stronger. His breathing became steadier thanks to medical support and ongoing checkups. Lila never stopped maintaining her midnight watch, though the ominous growls had subsided. Instead, she sometimes sniffed the air around Jacob's crib or let out a quiet whimper whenever the baby's breathing changed, an early alert for Lisa to check the monitor. Lisa felt more confident now, knowing that both technology and Lila were on her side. Sometimes, in quiet moments of reflection, Lisa marveled at how close they had come to tragedy. She would sit in the nursery, listening to Jacob's gentle breaths and stroking Lila's soft ears, recalling the fear and uncertainty of those sleepless nights. Yet she also realized the ordeal had brought them closer, strengthening her appreciation for life's fragility. Lila, in her steadfast loyalty, had revealed the depth of a dog's love. At last, calm settled over the household. There were still medical appointments and the occasional scare, but the daily terror had passed. Lila continued to snooze by the crib during nap time, always ready to spring into action if Jacob needed her. And Jacob, blissfully unaware of the drama, gazed at his parents and his canine protector with bright, curious eyes, as though saying thank you in the only way he knew how, by simply living, breathing, and thriving. In the end, the simple act of a dog's growl turned out to be a life-saving alarm for the family. Lisa, torn by fear and confusion, had mistakenly believed Lila was threatening her beloved child, when in reality, the dog was acting on an extraordinary sense of duty. Each night's unsettling rumble was a desperate plea for attention, a vigilant response to the silent danger lurking in Jacob's fragile lungs. Through countless sleepless nights, fruitless house inspections, and mounting frustration, it was Lila's unwavering loyalty that eventually guided them toward the truth. Learning that Jacob suffered from severe sleep apnea, both terrified and comforted the worried parents. At least they had an explanation. A medical condition that could be managed with proper care and monitoring. Even so, the family understood that a critical factor in saving Jacob's life had been Lila's instinctive actions. For weeks, she had stood guard, unable to communicate except through growls and barks, hoping her human companions would finally grasp the urgency of her message. Now, with Jacob's health on a steady path of improvement, the household has found a new equilibrium. Lisa and her husband have come to regard Lila not merely as a pet, but as a cherished guardian angel. Whenever friends or family marvel at the story, they smile with gratitude, realizing how easily things could have ended in heartbreak. Lila's nighttime vigil continues, but this time, it's met with relief and appreciation rather than dread. Through love, vigilance, and a dog's powerful intuition, they have forged an unbreakable bond, one defined by hope, protection, and a renewed understanding that sometimes our closest companions sense what we cannot see.